Welcome to episode 87 of Scouting Hot Finds Radio. This is Jason Spangler, the Santee Swapper, your host. Today we have an interview with John Smilek that was recorded at the Indianapolis Traderie in February of 2019. Now, as you'll hear in the interview, John and I have been talking on and off for, maybe a year about getting him on the podcast so that we could talk about a project he's been working on. But before I play that audio, I also wanted to let you know that during this interview, I also set up a small video camera and videotaped the exchange. Now, that video you can find at my website, scoutpatchcollectors.com. Over on the right-hand side, if you click on Scouting Hot Finds Radio, you'll find the show notes page for this podcast, and I'll have the video linked up there. Now, one reason you may want to watch the video is because during that, John actually shows the pictures. Well, it doesn't show the picture. He has the actual merit badge pamphlets in his hand and holds them up to the camera so that as you kind of go through this, you'll get a more visual explanation. However, the video does not include all of the audio. So the video I had to cut short after maybe, 10 or 12, 15 minutes. And then we continue the interview, which you'll hear tonight in podcast, and it goes on and on. So anyways, just want to let you know that in case you want to watch the video. I also did take stills of each of the different types of merit badge pamphlets, and I'll include those in the show notes as well. So I hope you enjoy the interview. I always enjoy myself getting people on the podcast who are doing interesting things in the hobby, and certainly I think that merit badge pamphlets is one of those pieces of the hobby where it's kind of a long ignored, and maybe people turn their nose up at them, that kind of thing. I know I'm pretty guilty of that. John will tell you that he came to my Charlotte Traderie, and I think I was selling my merit badge pamphlets for like 25 cents each or something, and he found 50 of them that he took home. So I've ignored these myself, but I think when people like John and some of his other collaborators you'll hear, Scott Wheeler, Ron Oslin, when they finally get this book together, then we can all understand the rich history of this. And really my point at the very end you'll hear is that this represents something that there aren't any really contrived rarities. There's no two-per-person delegate issues when it comes to a merit badge pamphlet. It was really a working tool meant to be used by scouts while they were advancing. And so now trying to go back and collect the different variations, and as merit badges changed and were phased out, it is kind of an interesting puzzle you can try to complete. And for most part, it's not that expensive, although you'll hear some of the ones you go back in time to the 20s, those get a little tough. So anyways, I hope you enjoy the interview. Again, John Smilek at the Indianapolis Traderie. Hey, this is Jason Spangler, the Santee Swapper. I'm here with my guest, John Smilek. We're at the Indianapolis Traderie. It's Saturday morning. The live auction's about to start soon, which is going to be pretty exciting. But John and I have been chatting back and forth for maybe about a year now about the project that he's been working on to document merit badge pamphlets. And we wanted to catch up at the Indianapolis Traderie, just kind of film a video and also get some audio down for a podcast so we can see what he's doing with this project. Because I know, John, lately you've had a lot of people jumping in, getting involved. There's been a lot of action.
Right. First, I'm a loyal follower of the podcast, so welcome to my fellow friends from the podcast. I've been watching for years myself. Yes, and we've been talking about this for a while. I asked to come here and have this podcast and to talk right now because we've known since about 2010 that there's been the 100th anniversary of everything from the Boy Scouts of America to the Order of the Arrow and all these different things. So this is kind of interesting that when it comes to merit badge pamphlets, which is still it's very collectible, but a lot of people collect patches, but others collect paper, and when they do, merit badge pamphlets are one that they collect. Well, the very first merit badge pamphlet was sold by Boy Scouts of America in February 1919. So we are now it is now February 2019. So this is the 100th anniversary month of the very first pamphlet ever being sold. And consider this the 100th anniversary of merit badge pamphlets. What I'd like to do is two things here. Number one, I'll get to this second, but I want to talk about it up front, is that what I want you all to understand is that I am working with, Jason is saying, I and others are jumping in and helping with me now to develop a merit badge pamphlets reference book, and they'll probably have a side pricing book as well. I think that's one thing that's held maybe this part of the collecting back a little bit, because other than a gentleman named Joe Price back in the last century, actually, I think he passed around 2000, he had a pretty decent booklet on that, but on merit badge pamphlets. It wasn't complete, but it was decent. Very much better than decent when he had it, but now it's over 20 years old. and the prices have changed. There's all new kinds of books, and I found many that he had not found. So I'm going to have a reference book out before this year is up, so that we can, everybody in the organization that would be interested in this can say, oh, there's some interesting books I want, some certain books I want. I'll tell you a little bit more about it at the end, but what I first do is just take a few minutes now, both the podcast and we're going to take some video, and just show you what just yesterday myself and some other core collectors of merit badge pamphlets decided on how this reference book is going to be set up, and specifically how we're going to categorize the different merit badge pamphlets. Just like an Order of the Arrow or patches, handbooks, everything else, it's best if you have some kind of an organization, because they did transition throughout the years. And I know that you that are just hearing me aren't going to be able to see this, but hopefully others will see the video when we have this. What we've decided now, for many years, some of you have seen the Kahuna books, and they had the white pamphlets as type 1. Well, we've decided to combine the two into all the whites will be type 1 now. There used to be the oldest one, which is this one right here, that has that has no requirements on it, fairly plain, but amazing drawings on this. We think that they're art in themselves. And then this was the type 2 whites. We're going to combine them, and these will be the first type of category. While I've got these in my hand, I'll say that these have really grown in price, and they're rare, and they're very interesting and beautiful old books. Most of these, again, the first one started in 1919 for sale, but actually a couple copyrights were 1918. So what happened on these, before I go on to the other types, a bit of background on them. Boy Scouts realized by at least 1914, 1915, that just having the requirements in the handbook were tough, because there was no continuity throughout the Boy Scout world back then for counseling and working with the boys on merit badges. And in many times it was very difficult at that time. Scouts were out in more rural areas, couldn't get to libraries. There were things where to find the requirements, to read over like citizenship and that kind of thing, where are you going to find that? So Scouts knew within 5 years that they needed some kind of pamphlet, not just the requirements, but a pamphlet to help the Scouts and the counselors to have it so they could have a guide to say, read these chapters, work on this. So what happened, it's interesting that World War I and World War II had a great influence on merit badge pamphlets. What happened is it really got hot and heavy to have merit badge pamphlets around 1916, 1917. BSA was starting to put together ideas. They went out to subject matter experts in the fields and said, okay, you do farming, you do chemistry, you do electronics. We would like you as a volunteer person to come up with a pamphlet for Boy Scouts of America. This was working all along. Then what happened in about 1916-17, World War I. Boy Scouts was fairly new, did not have a large budget for making paper or writing documents or anything. And if those of you that are historians in Boy Scouts know that the bonds, going out there and the Boy Scouts and the bond sale, the Boy Scouts of America took all the nickels and dimes they had and put it all toward pamphlets and flyers for bond sales. They wanted to be part of the war, save the world, help our guys over there, buy bonds. So merit badge pamphlets got put on the shelf. It is no coincidence that World War I ended in the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th month of 1918, and the first merit badge pamphlet came out 3 months later in February 19. That's not a coincidence, because they had to hold off. As soon as the war was over, within 90 days, the first pamphlet came out. The first one that was actually made was a couple of them, like electricity, have a copyright 1918. They had them, but of course they had the copyright as they made the book, but then they needed books before they start selling them. So that's when these came out. And in fact, if those of you that are seeing this actually live, what I'm holding in this hand over here that I'm moving is the very first printing of the very first merit badge pamphlet ever put for sale. So this is a trivia that'll be in my book later on, but if those of you that don't see the book, electricity, not camping, not life-saving, not first aid, electricity is the first subject merit badge pamphlet ever put for sale. And this is it. This was a 1918 copyright This is the oldest there ever is. So we have the white ones, what we're going to do then, and they're still collectible. I have almost all of them, so it's very hard, but you could collect all of them. It's just like very old OA or patches or whatever. They're very hard, but they can be done. One of the biggest collections, and a lot of people like them, are what we call the tans. I'm going to put them up. There's 4 subtypes, and I'm going to show them as I go. These I thought was very prominently displayed at the 2010 Jamboree 100th anniversary of scouting. For those of you that went there, you might have seen that they had an entire room of these tan merit badge pamphlets. I was very joyed because this is what I collect, that this was literally the biggest display they had in the 2010 museum, if you will, out there. A lot of OA stuff, patches, that kind of, but this was the largest. And if you're looking for these, again, for a little knowledge, these are going to be the type 2 of the 9 different types of covers that we're going to have on merit badge pamphlets, and they have 4 subtypes, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you'd like. They are by the address on the bottom. Boy Scouts of America used to be at 200 Park Avenue, or 5th Avenue. So then when they moved to 2 Park Avenue, they had to change the address on the bottom of the book, and that made a second subsite. So the first ones were in like 1925 to about 1928. These are in the late 20s and early 30s, type 2 or type B. Most common, if you will, if you want to say common, tans are getting less and less common, but still can get all those. The type 3, the hardest one, they did not do many of these. They just slightly changed it to N.Y. for New York. And then the final tan, more of a smaller type or whatever, and it has this smaller type on the bottom. And these are the 4 subtypes. Not all merit badge not all merit badges topics came in all 4. In fact, I don't even think half of them came in all 4, because some of the merit badges were introduced in the 20s and 30s. So of course they didn't have the older ones. And they have like the old Craftsman. If you like the old Craftsman. There's Craftsman merit badge, very hard to find. So then in 1939, they decided, this is back to the Art Deco time in our lives, which is an area I love, and I think this is the prettiest merit badge pamphlets they ever made. These start coming out in 1939, and I'd say 90% of the tans faded out then. But another thing is, people think that the tans were over in 1939. I found them all the way to 1946. The Boy Scouts were very frugal, and they decided that they would not throw away the covers they already had. Somebody printed them and somebody else did covers, and they would staple them together. So they kept the tan covers, and some of them, I'd say out of 120 different merit badges, I'd say 10, 12 of them went all the way into the mid 1940s. And I'll show you the second thing where war comes into play here. Also, these are beautiful inside for those of you that collect badges or merit badges. This is a beautiful time in the 30s to see all the beautiful badges and how they are inside. You've got all the rank and the other badges that are on the back of them, and then the back end of this also has the rest of the merit badges. So I still think that the tans, I would say, are most people's favorite to collect. I really love these because they're such a beautiful document. A last thing here I want to get to, a last few here. I'm not going to go spend quite as long, but I've got one last war story, literally and figuratively. In 1944, in the depths of World War II, when rationing was going strong, paper and ink were almost extinct. They just couldn't find it. So you've got these beautiful ones I had here, and a few tans left over, and instantly, in about March of 1944, they said, we don't have the ink or the paper, so they came up with what they call Wartime Books. That's this one. See how it's not very, you've seen the ones maybe have a white cover. These are the white covers that started the white cover, but this is a complete break in the old merit badge books to the new ones, because these were war times. They only lasted for 6 months. There's only about 80 of the topics that came about because it was only a few months. Some of those topics that didn't have as many printings didn't even get this book. On the back is an eagle, and it says Wartime Book. These are rare because they were only one printing. Every of the 80 or so topics they printed, they made one printing, and some of them only 1,000 books. So even that's like 70 years ago, and 1,000 books were made. How many are left? I think you can cut them on your fingers, but I'm still collecting these as well. Very fun book to get. So that's the other time World War affected the scouting. They changed to this. Then, literally by the end of 1944, early 1945, they came to the same design of keeping them in white over red, but now you can see how much brighter and whiter everything is because now they had regular paper instead of recycled paper before. But all they had was black and red ink, and that's how we ended up this phase. They had these books from about 1940, late 44 to early 1952. Then, I'm starting to show my age here. Of course, sitting here with my gray beard doesn't help, but I got into scouting and crossed over, I think, in 1963. And this is the kind of book I had, very popular for in the height of Boy Scouts of America. They have this photo over red, we call this. If you want to start collecting some, or maybe have a young scout that's interested in collecting something in paper, this is something I would recommend. I mean, any of them are great to collect, and a lot of those scouters my age like to collect the tan ones. But if you want to start with an inexpensive collection, most of these books are still probably $1 or less. Some of them go up to $15 for some special ones like beekeeping. Everybody seems to want that, or a few other of the farming ones. But for the most part, you could get for, I would say, $250, you could probably have an entire collection, have the fun of collecting this, and for $250, you could have the cover of every kind of books that existed back then from 1952 and into the 60s. Then we went and they decided to do a full photo. So these are the full photo ones from the late 60s and into the 66, I think, to about 72. And they didn't actually have these are even less expensive, but they're fun. Again, probably under $200. It'd be more sometimes for shipping. That's why Jason and I and others come to the different traderies and that kind of thing. Like he has, he'll confess, or he'll say that I bought. What do you think, about 50 of your books at yours last year? Yeah. I cleaned out, so he had less to put back into storage after I came through. And again, he was selling these things for $0.25 a piece. I mean, so there you go, and you can get some beautiful books like this. The other thing, I show you different topics here, because it's not just collecting by covers. Maybe you are very interested. Maybe you grow up on a farm. You want to collect the farming ones. Maybe you're a fireman, and you want to collect all the firemen from the first to the last. Here's one of the things I really think that those of you like myself, I'm a little stuck on merit badge pamphlets because I own almost every kind you have, so I'm like diversifying. One thing I do is I like to collect now and buy merit badge sashes. But those of you in the merit badge pamphlet world, how about some of these merit badge pamphlets to go with some of your most rare badges? So you could have your badge and the book next to it. If you're getting stuck finding some new things, you want to really buy something and it's getting frustrating, start buying some of these merit badge pamphlets at a fairly inexpensive place and have them referencing with your badges. By the way, there are four-legged bee merit badges that are very expensive. Their bee merit badge pamphlets are there. And for those of you that know about the shooting star weather merit badge that was around for a while, then some smart scout said, what does a shooting star have to do with weather? And they changed it to the weather vane. There are tan merit badge pamphlets like I have there, like I showed you earlier, that have the shooting star on them. They only did them for 2 or 3 printings, 1925 to 1927. But if you are someone like myself who are fortunate enough to have the Shooting Star Merit Badge, wouldn't it be nice behind it to have but have the book to go with it? So there's that. Now we're almost to current times. 1979 to 2007, we had this what we call the red and white strip one. This again too, I've been buying them here for about 15, 25 cents. The nice ones, 25 cents a piece. Again, for a couple $100, you could have these. These are a large collection. There was a lot that changed in all those years of 40 years almost of having this book out there. But another neat thing to collect, not a high price. Finally, we get up to today, and there was an interesting thing that there's just going to be the Type 9 cover. I went through the different ones. This one came out, and if you notice down here, the word Boy Scouts and everything is in the actual picture. Well, I bought all these. I don't want, brand new when they came out in 2008, the entire collection. And I didn't do it again when they changed because it's too expensive. But when I bought these things, I didn't realize that only in 2008 and sometimes in 2009 did they have the words up here. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference here too. And let me show you the next one. Someone said, well, that's kind of lost in the picture here. So what happened in 2010 until now, they put it down and they made the margins a little larger, and then they put the words in here on the bottom. And this is the way it's been since 2010 until present. So those are the different books. And for those that have been listening on the pod without the picture, I'm sorry, but let me get back and tell you a little bit more, just another 5 to 10 minutes on the book. So what I'm going to do with these different 9 categories, there'll be subcategories, subcategories. I'm going to have a chapter on hardcover merit badge pamphlets because there's people that just collect those. There's some specialized one. I meant to bring one for those of you that love your Air Scout. There's the 4 blue one merit badge pamphlets. You know they're blue. But here's a little secret for you guys out there. 2 of the 4, and I apologize, I meant to look into this, but 2 of the 4 have, drum roll, let me find it, the wartime? No, they have. They don't have the wartime, but they have the regular white. 2 of them. So if you are somebody who thinks you've got everything when it comes to Air Scouts, yes, you've probably got the 4 blue ones because they just stand out, and they're definitely about $25 for a mint one of those. But what's even more valuable in my book as a merit badge collector is 2 of them have the red over white cover for 1 or 2 printings. Good luck finding those, but they're out there, so go hunting for those as well. It's airplane design and airplane structure, I think, are the 2. I can't quite remember. But anyway, just another fun thing. So my point is here at the end, with myself and some other colleagues that are very much into just preserving the history of merit badging and making it easier for the new to collectors to come along. Scouts Honor, we're working on it, and I will have a reference book out here soon. And we'll make sure we get it out to everybody and would like to get a copy of it. And then also a pricing guide that I'll keep separate because Boy Scouts of America aren't thrilled of having those 2 together, but I'll have that as well. So then you can understand, well, what am I looking at? Am I looking at a $5 book or a 50-cent book? It's important to know that. So thank you again for your time. We're going to get this reference book out to you. It'll be color coordinated. It's going to be thousands of pictures, at least hundreds of pictures, maybe not thousands, but hundreds, thousands of pictures, a couple thousand pictures. So I'll have details on back covers, different subsets that are in the books and that kind of thing, and all these little specialty when a badge changed and only one printing had a badge change, and then they changed the type of cover from one cover to the next year. Oh, then that's more valuable because they only had 1 printing of that, where the other one had 8 of that. These are the kind of things, just in patches. You all understand what I'm saying about these little niche things. That's what everybody's looking for. It'll all be in there so you all can have a great time looking through it and hopefully starting or expanding your collection.
John, thanks so much for that explanation, and I'm really glad we got that all on video so the visual piece will be there for people who are interested. So John, a little bit of a follow-up. We've got the video filmed with all the books, and we'll try to take pictures of all these. So in the podcast show notes, we'll have pictures of all the books that John was referencing in the video. So if you're just listening to this in audio, you won't be totally left out. But let me just kind of say in general, one thing I like about this collection is kind of what I discovered about insignia, which I was very late to collecting that. There's just not really contrived rarities. This was true scouting that was happening, as you said. They introduced merit badges, they retired merit badges, they went through the war. That's where you have these little variations and stuff. But there's no 2 per person delegate patch here. This is like real scouting. Can you kind of touch on that?
Right, I will. Let me give you a couple examples. There's many of you that collect, especially merit badge merit badges, know that the safety merit badge, I'm going to give that as an example. What was the name of the safety merit badge before it was called the safety merit badge? Put you on the spot. Do you know that?
Oh, man. All right.
I put him on the spot.
You got me. I'm drawing a blank.
Safety first.
Oh, God. I didn't know that.
Yes, they were safety first, and that comes, as a lot of you know, that those of you especially that collect merit badges, I'm telling you, our worlds are so close. I have to know a lot about merit badges to do merit badge pamphlets. So, as many of you know, the original merit badges came over from England, and they changed over a lot of them. There was something different with firemanship or something like that, and a couple others. Anyway, so Safety First came from England. They have, on the white ones, we have Safety First. Now, what Jason's talking about, it was very much in a linear fashion of changing things. But again, it's linear, and there's a lot of books, but there's not like a depth. Like, oh, well, the Lodge put out 3 different types of flaps for a fundraiser to go to a jamboree. There's not a lot of that. This is utilitarian. They wanted the books for the boys to use. So let me go back to Safety. It was Safety First. Then when the Tans came out in 1925, Safety First became Safety in 1928. And so for 1925, 1926, and 1927, they had Safety First Merit Badge books, but then they turned it to Safety, and so there were only a couple that actually had Safety First on it. The other interesting thing on that is, and I bet you a lot of you have really never noticed this unless you're a hardcore Merit Badge collector, the Safety First Merit Badge was a green cross on a white background. So what is Safety? Safety is a white cross on a green background. Boy Scouts of America took it from the green. If you've ever been to Europe, especially England, all their pharmacies and stuff have brown signs with a green cross and a white background. That's like pharmaceutical, that's first aid. So Safety First, that came from England. Then the U.S. and BSA changed it from green on white to white cross on green. And when they did that, there was one printing where they changed the name from Safety First to Safety, but they left the old green on white. That's the errors that you guys like to find. They should have changed both at once. They didn't. These are kind of the fun things you find when you're searching for them. And I was telling Jason too about the Shooting Star. The Shooting Star, some of the Tan Merit Badge books had a red. The words were in red. There's different colors for the writing on the top, the title of books, and then some have yellow. So some of them are printed in yellow, some are in red. And I could go through all kinds of iterations, especially the white over red. There was not a lot of continuity in there. They would change the font. They would change the words. They'd have them all in caps. Then they have some in caps and some in not. These are the things that you like to find and are unusual.
All right, so 2 more questions for you. One is, can you discuss the books that people often come by that are in sort of the library casing? Start with that, and then I got one final question for you,
sure.
John.
Sure. That's interesting too. Actually, in the book the reference book that I'm going to do, they have. I won't even. Let me expand on that a little bit, Jason. Not just the library ones. Let's just call them hardcover books, okay? And the reason I want to make that distinction is, I think I have found the oldest hardcover Merit Badge pamphlet where somebody or some organization put a hardcover on the soft ones, and that is, I believe, about in 1920. Remember, the first Merit Badge pamphlet came out in 1919. I have a San Francisco Council. It's changed its name to San Francisco Bay and all that kind of thing, but San Francisco Council, I've got a hardcover on that the council put in. The council that hasn't existed since like 1925, but it's got a hardcover. So there were hardcovers before Boy Scouts of America came out with hardcovers. Then they have, I would say, at least 10 different hardcovers that they put in. They'd send them to the Boy Scouts of America. Boy Scouts of America would put them in library. They'll sell them or give them out to libraries for scouts to use. And the librarians would go, and as the books progressed, they would just take out the sewing, if you will, the stitching, and put the new book in. So that's a great collection, too, of the hardback ones that a lot of people like to collect.
All right, so my final question is, what is the future here? So, for example, in the days of the digital age, a lot of textbooks, for example, are going completely online, no printed versions. So that's where one question is there a future to this? And the other is, are they going to change all the covers to Scouts BSA and you have to have a new type?
I've already thought of I've thought of both those things. Number one, it is one of these things like neckerchiefs. You don't need neckerchiefs anymore. It's kind of interesting. So it's kind of a historical thing. I think that eventually, probably, but not in the next few years, maybe the next 10, 20 years, there are a few. There's about half a dozen, mostly Eagle required ones that are digital. I think they might phase out, but there's sometimes that you just need a hard book out there in the bad weather and that kind of thing.
Or at summer camp where you don't
Summer
have
camp, we don't have the internet when you're down on the waterfront. I'll tell you what, try and collect the waterfront books. They all have water stains on them. I don't know how that happened. So yeah, that could change. And what was your second?
Do you think that they'll do a different cover with Scouts BSA and you have the whole new typeset?
Yes, I think I'm already thinking that when we get this new book put out, and it'll be digital, of course, the books that were back from the 1980s and 90s, this guy named Joe Price, wonderful guy, he literally did a typewriter on a piece, an 8x11 sheet of paper. There's no digital, so we're going to have to digitize all this, and we're doing it right now. But then, yes, I think when in the next couple year or so, they're going to come out instead of Boy Scouts of America, it's going to be Scouting or Scout Me In or whatever they're going to put on the cover of this. I'm not sure if they'll change the color, from the color covers they have now, but I think that the name on the bottom is going to have to change, and that'll probably be a new subset of the color ones. That is my prognosis. My guess is that they're going to keep the same cover, but they're going to change it. Yes, and then that'll be a whole new group.
All right, let me also just throw in, I know you've mentioned in this interview several people, you've mentioned other people. Can you go ahead and name the folks that have really done the heavy lifting and helped you with this? Let's kind of give them a little shout out.
Yeah. Scott, I just know Scott and Ron, but I can't remember.
Scott Wheeler
and Ron Oslin are the two main ones, and there are a couple other people that aren't in scouting actually, but those two are. Scott says he loves to watch movies and sit and type, and he types like a maniac, so he's taking all this that I have in text form and turning it into electrons for me. And then Ron and I are really the ones that are kind of modeling of how, from now on, I think for 100, 200 years from now, it'll be what we've come up with as far as what's the different types. How are we going to define these of subtypes? And the one thing Jason's saying, there'll be just not the 9 types but there'll be subtypes, like 4 subtypes of tans I showed you. Then there'll be subtypes, and there'll be references in the book of like star 1 note, and then go down to the notes like you would in any other reference book. And in there, then I will discuss why this was different here and there. So these guys are, Ron's helping me really with the research, and Scott is the magic fingers on Excel and Word that are putting it all in. And without him, one person can't do this, as Jason will tell you on a lot of things he's working with. So that's the future.
John, thanks very much. It's been a great interview, and I appreciate you. Glad we finally got to get together. We've been talking about it for maybe a year or more now.
It's been more than a year, so thank you. And what better time, the 100th anniversary month of Merit Badge Pamphlets.
Yeah, and I think you've got a lot of momentum now, so I think it's going to be not too long before you guys have something in hand.
Yes, sir.